And we are a minute late, but I think we have all of our actual tree board members, so I will call the meeting to order. Did anyone bring a short reflection? Does anyone have a short reflection they'd like to give?
I'll give a short.
Welcome. Come on in.
I'll give a short reflection. Only because I just finished doing the Wonderland Trail around Mount Rainier, and it was amazing. And the variety of the trees in Washington are so deeply impressive. And I was really proud to be on our tree board as I was observing sort of a picture into the past. My very short reflection.
The whole trail?
The whole trail.
How long?
It took 10 days.
Wow. Good for you.
And I smelled really bad. I told my husband, I was like, I'm sniffing the day hikers because they're like deodorants as we would pass them.
I recall, I didn't know what part of it was. I recall most of it is that Rainier is just always there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've hiked another mountain range before, you know, in the morning, there's some mountain is up ahead to your right.
Right.
And by the afternoon, it's gone. Wonderland Trail, Rainier is just always there.
Yeah, it's always there. You can see Adams and Mount Hood sometimes, Baker, some of the other mountains from different perspectives. But yeah, always Rainier too.
That's awesome. Any other short reflection pieces folks have? Okay, we can move on to introductions since we have a guest with us today. Richard, do you want to start?
With the introduction? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm Richard Saunders, tree board member. I know Linda well, so greetings.
Thank you. I'm Victoria Kutas, she, her pronouns, and I am vice chair of the tree board and chairing tonight's meeting.
Awesome. I'm Stacy, she, her pronouns also, and I'm just a member of the tree board.
Just a member.
Second year. Just a member. What's your name, sir? Oh, I'm sorry, Stacy Spain.
Stacy.
Yeah.
Linda Holman, visitors.
And I'm Doug Sprugel, tree board member.
I'm Elizabeth, I'm the assistant planner of the city.
Excellent. Have folks gotten a chance to review the agenda for today?
Yes.
I would like to add one thing I would like to propose that we move new business above old business and give Linda a few minutes, add a piece of new business to discuss the project in Blue Herring Park. So that is the only change I have to it. Any other changes for the agenda for tonight? No. I would like to move to adopt.
Second.
Great. Adopted agenda. Minutes for May and July. We have a couple to approve. Any notes that folks already know of?
Your film gave a short reflection on chocolate cake.
Correct.
That was when they brought cake through last day.
Oh.
Yeah. That was what he said verbatim. I could take that out if you want.
I think it can stay. That is what we discussed during the short reflection. Was chocolate cake.
Disgusting. Far worse things.
Okay. Any other notes? Do we need to formally approve them separately?
Mhm.
Okay. May 7th. You want to move to approve the minutes?
Stacy, your turn.
I moved to approve the minutes. I don't think I was there on May 7th. Move to approve the minutes for May 7th. Oh, yeah, I was.
Great. And July 2nd.
Also moved to approval as minute.
Excellent. Minutes all approved. We don't have any other members of the public there. Would you like to make any comments during the public comment section of the meeting?
No.
Okay. We can move on then. We don't have Larry here, who would usually do reports and announcements from the council. Elizabeth, do we have any reports or announcements from the city that you know of?
I know the process is moving along to get arborist. We're kind of nearing down on a couple candidates, so that's moving pretty quickly, which I think is pretty good.
Excellent to hear.
Yeah. And then we are currently changing systems for permitting. So we've gone kind of a backlog on tree permits, but it's just, you know, the growing pains of changing systems.
Is there like a contract arborist looking at those? No.
Right now, we do not have a contract arborist.
That would still.
Yeah, that's why we're trying to move like quickly on hiring an arborist, so that we don't have to hire an outside consultant. But it also depends on how quickly they say they can start. But I think Mark said we're thinking of maybe opening it up to Facet for them to do some tree permits, to do the review, but we're still waiting. There's still no formal answer on that, so, but we're trying to move along. And that's all I have.
Excellent.
Oh, sorry. I do know, Larry sent an email. He said as far as for his reports, he did mention the levy, that's gonna be on the election. That's the only report he had.
Okay.
Elizabeth,
Be on the
quick question.
November ballot, correct?
Sorry.
What was that? Richard?
I was just, a quick question for Elizabeth. The arborist position, it's like Drew was, it's a part-time or not a full-time position?
Yeah, it's still gonna be part-time. And I say arborist, but the official title's urban forest planner.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's 30 hours a week.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. If that is it for reports and announcements, we can move on to new business and chat about Blue Heron Park.
All right.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. This is a big thing for me. I've been waiting about 35 years to get back in there and do something. So here we go. So what I did was, these are not the most updated plans, but I brought a larger copy so that it would be easy for people to take a look at, the pass them around. It's kind of a daunting scenario because the park has been underdeveloped, undercared for so long that trying to go in there now and do something daunting. So what our plan is it, can you see this, okay?
Well, it can be put in one.
Grab some. Table back here.
Sorry, Richard.
These are magnets. Do you want me to hang it up?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
That may be
Yeah,
helpful, and then you can stand.
Richard, can you see that wall?
That's really far away. Yeah, it's gonna be hard. But you know what? I can follow up with Linda and get a copy of that.
I charge by the hour.
Oh, good.
So this is basically what it looks like. This is kind of not exactly how things are looking, but we can ignore that for now. So what we decided to do was take this area here, which is the one that's so full of, right in the middle.
Yeah, can you sort of put that whole thing in perspective? 'Cause I've only been there once or twice.
Oh, okay, so this is the street, I can't remember the name of the street that runs along here. And then there's a gas station over here, and then this is Bothell way out here,
So
and
it's like,
over here.
oh, it's
is-
upside down right now, from north and south.
Over here is,
North is that way.
yeah. Is where up in here is where the bridge is. With the yellow.
Yeah,
So when you come into the park, you know, where this parking area, okay, so it's kind of out of scale here, which is not helpful, but. The major part of what was attempted planting numerous times has become really overgrown. I know there's been a long-time concern of our police department because they drive by, they can't see in. Because everything is just really bad, and we've got some trees in here, we've got. See, this has been done so long ago, it's really unfortunately out of scale with what it is now, but there's a number of evergreen trees, there's trees, there's some. Sorry, I have lost, I can't remember the name of the other trees that are in there. That are all crowded into this space, and what was attempted to be a planting of native plants and pollinators and so forth. Is all overgrown, there's blackberries and everything, it's difficult to get in here. This is primarily has turned into nothing but sword ferns. Which isn't a real bad thing, but that's what it is right now. So we're gonna focus, this is gonna be a long-term project. This is not gonna go quickly, and it should. So we were gonna start over here and clean this up, and then once we got it open and clean, we're gonna determine what's best to do in terms of planting. We did find out that there actually is water there, so we've got a hookup. We'll have to drag hoses, but at least it's something there to get started. And the some of the trees that have just sprouted up, quaking aspen, I'm sorry, that's what they are. So they're very, very small trees, they're like, their trunks are like this, but they're everywhere throughout this. So we don't want to take out, the evergreens, but we want to get out the quaking aspens.
Are they really quaking aspen?
Hmm?
Are they really quaking aspen?
That's what I was told.
Okay.
That if they're not, then I couldn't tell you that. So we were gonna take care of this first and then move over here, which luckily has a number of native things and things that are in there that can stay. It just primarily needs a cleanup. And so that would be our second piece, just to get all of this moving. We'll clean out what's over here with the ferns and leave that stay. The other two areas that really, this again, the scale is wrong here because when you come across the bridge, there's a lot more space over here. So there's like two grassy areas, and we're gonna leave the grass is horrible and dead. We're gonna leave it because it's holding the soil right now. So we don't want to jump in and do too many things at once. And it won't be helpful, it won't be the right things to do. Also, the city is agreed to have the people who came in the last time and removed the black locust. So what happened was, when that happened, they should have come back for a second round to get all those runners and everything out. That never happened, so they're all back. So this time, it's gonna have to be a commitment to take both, to do both pieces, because otherwise it's gonna be the same thing again. So we're leaving all that for now, because I think the important thing is if we clean up over here and have something to offer, to the community and say, all right, we're working on this, but look, here's something that's been cleaned up and it's inviting and we're gonna have, hopefully native plant signage, so we can bring people in and, give them some sense of, this is how you could do this. So, and look at this area, it doesn't get much sun, so these are the things that would be best to plant. And also the signage would go along with that. And then we hop over here and clean this up, because several people thought it was a great idea to plant the, Oregon grape, the ones that grow up like this. So they have grown up like this and now they're completely covering the path, which is. And back in here, there is no Echo Lawn Church here, so that's just not happening. There's dead grass and moss and so forth, and there are picnic tables and stuff. So at some point, we wanna get this whole area here because it's the most inviting. And the nicest way to get people in, to start looking at what's going on. And eventually we'll work our way down to the stream, but that's where we're gonna need stream keepers, Richard. And people, who have some sense of that, because we don't want to disturb the ecosystem by the creek. So we've also got a few little, I should have taken some pictures, but the third grade class at Lake Forest Park School has taken two tiny little areas right by the creek, and they're doing some native planting there. So the goal here is to bring in people from all different, have spectrums. I've got people from the Stewardship Foundation, I've got some master gardeners, I've got the school, I've also the person who is the chair of the park board, he's a scout leader for Eagle Scouts, so the Eagle Scouts are interested in doing a project. So I'm trying to get a wide variety of people involved, so different skill sets, different, experiences, different knowledge base. Because that's what it's gonna take to make it really work and really viable and helpful and something to really offer the community. So that's where it stands right now. We're not gonna start doing anything until the end of September. That's when we'll start with a few work parties, just cleanups.
Who's we? Can you say we? What, is that an organization you're with that?
Well, no, I'm sort of my own worship.
Yeah.
Well, I'm working with Corey Madsen.
Yeah.
So she's the environmental person from the city, and we've been talking about doing this for a really long time. And I've got a person who is he's the secretary treasurer of the Stewardship Foundation. I've got one of our master gardeners who designed and built our irrigation system in Animal Acre. She's gonna help with that. Got public works that are gonna help with how we do water and how we set all that up, so. So I'm bringing together, like I said, people with a wide variety of interests and knowledge base and commitment to do this and make it really a community project.
Yeah.
So
And Linda,
that's
you're
what I've
also,
got, and I'm here to talk to you about it and see if anybody here. I really would like somebody from the tree board who's really knowledgeable about trees to take a walk through with us and really look at what's there and what should go and, what needs to stay, so. That was kind of what I was, wanting to put forth tonight. And see if, what the interest is there, because we'd really like to get all the right things in and all the wrong things out
Yeah.
for once and for all.
Yeah.
So. Any questions?
If we get him to do it, Dick would be the logical person for
I was
that.
gonna say.
Dave is not here, but Dave really, he knows the trees very well, he knows. I know the trees that are native to our forest here, but I
Yeah.
don't know the ones that are planted here.
That should go.
Yeah. Dick could do it, that would be
Why did you ask me about the quaking aspen? Is
kind of
there,
an odd thing to have growing around here, I would have said. Generally,
Unless someone planted it, they're actually
yeah,
one organism. The Speaking aspens are actually one organism and they grow up. So that's why there's such dense patches of them and they grow really super closely to one another. But it is sort of strange. I haven't
Well,
seen a lot of
Well, no, they're more dry country, they're doing this, you find them more, you
Yeah.
find them more normally on the east side of the mountains, but
Lots of,
anything can be planted anywhere.
lots of misinformation about things in here.
Oh,
So, so it's possible they're not,
yeah,
but that's what someone identified to me, that's what they are.
yeah,
Whatever they are, they shouldn't be there
Yeah.
anymore. They're not, it's not the right thing.
yeah.
So-
And Dick isn't part of the board anymore, is he though?
Oh, yeah.
He still is, oh, for until like February or something.
He thought that his term expired and it didn't, so
Right.
we get him for
Yeah.
another year.
Oh, it's awesome. Okay, great. I'm super interested in helping you, but I don't have the tree knowledge. Yeah.
There's so much other, there's so many other things, so when I'm kind of been focusing on the last year or so, I'm working on a certification for a pollinator steward.
Oh.
And so we created a whole lot of pollinator gardens and animal acres, and the enthusiasm was there, but we didn't stop to think, one at a time. So now we got 4. And the watering isn't out here. But, so I'm coming from that,
Yeah.
native plants, pollinators, sustainable,
Yeah.
water wise, those are where I'm focusing,
Yeah.
So as far as the trees, help.
We could totally, I'm sure we could reach out to Dick and, see if he would at least take a walk through. I mean, he doesn't have to be super involved, but
Right,
he could probably take a
Right.
walk through.
yeah.
I will reach out to him.
That'd be great.
But I really, like I said, really want the community involvement here. That's one of the biggest things that
Yeah.
I'm going for is inclusion of all different kinds of people in the community, different organizations, different levels of interest, knowledge,
Yeah.
so forth. So
Yeah.
and that's the only way it's gonna be.
Yeah. How'd you become interested in the project?
I've lived here for 41 years. So about 30-something years ago, I believe Richard, I don't know how long you've lived here, but I believe this was a private property. I believe there was a house there. That's what I'm vaguely recalling. And then something happened and the city got the property, but I don't remember all the details of that. So first of all, someone said, oh, let's try for, like they have over at Shoreline Library, they've got a composting type of a setup. Well, in those days, you said compost and people went nuts. Oh my God, compost, you mean there's gonna be garbage all over? End of story. So it didn't happen. So 3 or 4 different times, different groups of people tried to get it planted. So one time, the last time I recall, they went out, they planted all kinds of stuff in here, and the next day, or maybe it was even the same day, a whole bunch of guys who had a landscaping business came and walked right into their park and took every single thing. Every single one of them. So after that, it kind of fell apart. There was never any sustainable group or person who would stick with it, and then I got all caught up in animal acres for the last 13 years, so I'm sort of not paying attention here. But when I talked to Corey and Drew when she was still here, and we started to talk about doing something over there, so this time it's good.
Yeah.
Make it
Not
happen.
backing off. Gonna happen. So that's the story. That's why I'm here to talk to you guys about it and hopefully get some interest going and see what we can do over there. I know that one of the things in the city, at least this is my recollection, that if trees are small, they can be taken out without an arborist or without a tree company. Because we tried to do something like that over there in Ann Arbor, but didn't work out.
Yeah.
It's too big, but there's a lot of those, whatever somebody identified as quick in Aspen, they're very, very small trunks.
Yeah.
They're really immature trees,
Yeah.
whatever they are, so they could easily be taken out.
Under 6 inches doesn't require a permit, correct?
Mhm. Definitely.
Yeah, 6
definitely.
inch diameter.
I'm gonna get a picture,
Yeah.
just like, take it,
Sure,
walk over there sometime.
One of the things we have on our agenda, the other things that we will be getting to is some tabling opportunities that we'll be at this fall. And as the person who usually provides all of the materials for whatever we're talking about, this is the kind of thing that I'd love to help advertise. Are you guys gonna have a table? You're with the Parks Board as well, is that correct? Are you guys gonna have a table at Picnic in the Park?
I don't know, because our meeting is not until the end of this month, so I don't know. I know Master Gardeners are, because usually I'm at that table, but this year I decided I'm going to take a break from that.
Well, if you have information about work parties or how folks can get involved, if you want us to have any kind of a flyer, one pager or something to spark interest in folks getting involved with coming up and helping out, I would be.
Great.
I will speak for the rest of the tree board and say we'd be happy to have. It's always nice to have a diversity of information of how folks can get engaged and kind of what's going on in the community. So
Great, wonderful.
that would be awesome.
Can you folks hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, just a comment. So, Linda, first of all, just thank you for presenting, and just want to recognize the passion and the amount of energy that you've put into the parks and this project. What I was going to say was the tree board does outreach and education. We do planting events, and we advise the council on policies and things. So like Victoria just said, the getting information and distributing information and helping educate people about what's going on at the park or what needs to happen at the park is definitely along the lines of what we can do. I know you and I have talked about doing a tour. I think, like the others said, that Dick Olmsted would be a great person to join that, and hear his assessment of what would be good things to plant there, that the tree board could then either participate in planting or at least advise, with Dick as our leader. So those things seem like the sort of things to address your question of how can the tree board be involved. And I also just want to say, I think it's great that you're working with the city, you're working with the Stewardship Foundation, you're working with the other commissions. So getting everybody together, and having a coordinated effort is really important.
Are you still working with the same landscape designer? Plans?
If there was a landscape designer on these plans, it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and her name was down here. I don't know if she still lives there.
Oh, we put that Victoria?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we should, I'm in the garden club with her.
Oh, okay, but she must have done those plans. Yeah,
I did.
got it, okay. That makes sense. She's not a landscape designer? She did a good job.
No, no.
Oh, okay, okay.
She definitely is.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And it sounds like an awesome project. Yeah.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing where it goes.
All right,
How we can be involved.
wonderful, thanks.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi, Drew.
Drew. Hi. So excited she's here.
how are you all?
Good.
We're fine.
We were afraid that we wouldn't see you tonight.
Are you our new forest planner?
No, hoping you guys get one soon though.
Yeah,
Soon enough.
big shoes to fill.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
trying to get my volume sorted out. Yeah, guys working on.
We just heard a presentation on the Blue Heron Park
Oh, nice.
and how we can help Linda clean that up. Have you seen it, Drew?
No, sorry, I'm just trying to get my sound thing figured out. I'm not in my house. Okay,
Have you seen aspens around in any of our parks?
Aspen.
Waking aspen.
No, I don't think so. Not that I can think of offhand. Oh, I think there actually are some at Blue Heron, way on the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was talking about that and how they probably need to be ripped out because they're just crowding some of the other plantings.
Eh.
But they're beautiful, right?
Yeah, I think they're really pretty and they're, they got that look similar to birch and
And they're obviously very happy there, right?
I know that's my thing, like taking out healthy trees if they're not kind of invasive, it's like, yeah, got some other problems, but it's up to you guys.
Well, it's probably up to Linda and her crew.
Yeah.
Well, they are pretty, they are, I mean, they're gorgeous in the fall and they're full size,
They're-
they turn, full hillsides turn golden.
Yellow.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not familiar with that around here.
Yeah.
If there is
It
any-
sounds like Linda's trying to put a plan together though, so it sounds like she's open to hearing recommendations.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be hard to get the aspen out because they spread by roots. And that should get the roots out too, which would be doing a lot of damage to the whole system.
Yeah.
And, yeah, challenge to get them out and keep, unless you poison them, I suppose,
Yeah.
they don't want to do that close to the creek.
Yeah. Hopefully Dick can do a walkthrough with them and
Yeah.
share some advice.
Yeah. Do you have her contact?
Yes, I do.
It could possibly might be easier to thin them unless got a few of them grow big instead of having a lot of little ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we are ready, we can move into old business. We have got a few things to cover tonight. I've got updates. I was hoping to be able to look at them on my laptop, but it has died, so pardon me while I reference my phone. So the first thing we have listed is updates for the SFI grant and where we stand with that. I have been in a series of emails that I am trying to find right there. There we go. With Mike Martini from SFI around next steps, and Mark, who connected with Mike before he headed out. Mark headed out on vacation. And we are trying to find time to meet and go over kind of next steps and chat with SFI about the scope. I'm trying to remember which one's which. The US Forest Service is requesting progress on grants as soon as possible. So while our official deadline is the end of the year to sign an agreement with SFI, they are getting pressure to sign agreements as soon as possible. So he is eager to get things moving forward.
What is the SFI grant for?
The SFI one, would you like to give a recap if you recall off the top of your
Yeah,
head?
yeah, I can totally help. So SFI is the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, and they have their own benchmarking standard for sustainable urban forests, basically in community forestry, just saying like, hey, here's a bunch of different topics, in urban forestry, and then this grant supports a third party person coming in and doing an assessment of how well Lake Forest Park is meeting all of those. So, climate is part of it, community engagement, different things. And then they basically give you at the end of it, whoever you hire to do it, going through all those, how you measure up, and then guidance or suggestions on how you could improve, certain areas of it. That's the base of the grant. And then basically there's extra money where if you want to do anything to help support that work, the money's there for it. So that's where that extra money we were talking about, you could use for urban forestry management plan stuff or tree inventory things, or whatever. And basically you're saying that work is going to help inform this report.
This is a pretty big grant, on like 75,000, as I recall.
Yeah, I think it's 68,000. So I think the cap was 70.
Yes, and this is one that I believe you left us kind of a menu of things that other cities had done and we could kind of pick from, so there's some pieces that we have to include. But some pieces that are kind of optional, I have not gone back and reviewed that, I know Mark has looked at it. Mark Hoffman shared that he has been swamped with things and has not had capacity to look at this. It sounds like he was hoping to be here to chat with us about it tonight and talk through next steps. I was hoping to talk next steps for timeline of when he thinks we could move it forward, because it will need approval by council before we can sign anything or agree to accept the grant.
One of the things that. Well, I guess the idea is that the consultant might, probably if we encourage him to, recommend that we learn more about the trees on city property. Because the great majority of our management work is managing trees on private property. And we don't have really a very good record of trees and planting strips and parks. And as I recall, that's something you thought the consultant might recommend, or something we might ask the consultant to recommend?
That was, I believe, part of the discussion about the KCD
Okay, that's different.
and the canopy assessment tool, and what different segmentation we want on the
Well, that's a
KCD.
different question. This should be going out and actually doing a survey, finding out what we've got along the streets. Because when you look at other cities, what they know about. One other city I don't, or two I know about, what they know about is the trees that the city controls. They don't really know very much about trees in yards, I suspect.
Mhm.
Whereas we know a lot about the trees in yards, but we have no specific records about trees the city controls, which is different. I don't know if it's better or worse, but the trees that are actually under the city's control, which is the easiest ones to work with. We're, as far as I know, we have almost no information about street trees.
Yeah. And that was a line item in the proposal RFP I left. Was one of the items was getting tree inventory work done for all city owned trees, either in parks and right away, or just one or the other, depending on, you know, how much coin you want to spend on the project.
So that's part of this grant, is to get somebody to do that. And then, okay, great.
If it is one of the pieces that we suggest keeping. So the draft that Drew wrote up has more than $68,000 worth of optional work that we can pick from. What we need to do is decide what of that work we would like to see, we would like to move forward on. I was hoping that I could meet with Mark and Mike before, to talk through things a little more and get a better understanding from SFI before going into like making our final decision of what we want to ask for. But I will work on scheduling that meeting, hopefully with Mark. I don't know what capacity Mark Hoffman will have to join us for that meeting, but hopefully he can be in the SFI meeting. I also can't remember, I don't know if you know, I know there were a couple of things that as Corey was transitioning out, as Drew was transitioning out, were going to be temporarily handled by Corey. And I can't remember if this was one of them. I believe the KCD one,
Yes.
She was going to help support.
To my knowledge, just a case.
Okay. So next steps on SFI, I think, are Mark, Mike, and I meeting, hopefully the three of us, four of us, if Mark Hoffman can be there, in a couple weeks. And if folks want to go back and look at, I believe the proposal that Drew left got circulated to the whole tree board. If it didn't, I believe Mark has it. I'm copied in an email with it and I can send it to.
I don't think I got it. I got
Okay.
very good stuff.
I
I'd
can't.
say Mark Phillips or Mark Hoffman.
Yeah, I think it would have come from Phillips. I think it came to me from Phillips.
Yeah, I don't. Sorry.
So many Marks and Mikes.
Yes. It's in my office, it's Amy's. We have 4 Amy's that I work
Wow.
with regularly.
My God. There aren't even enough letters in the name to like parse those out to 4
Yeah.
different people.
Yeah. So I will follow up this meeting by sending that out. I'm sorry, I did not send it to or review it beforehand so that we could pull it up and review it together right now. Any
Victoria,
other-
is there a timeline for that? I didn't hear if you said that.
So our official timeline to get it signed is the end of the year, but SFI has a fire being lit under their butt by the US Forest Service, and so they would like us to sign as soon as possible. I know last meeting, Mark Hoffman did not seem in a rush to get it signed in terms of feeling like, there's plenty of time between now and the end of the year to get it to council. We don't need to be getting it to council until October, November. I think SFI would like to see us do it much sooner than that. So,
Okay, thanks.
yeah. They did not give an official deadline. I don't think they have a specific, like, you have to get us an answer back by September 1st or anything, but
That's where the administration clawing money back from everywhere.
they are eager to see progress.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drew, you don't have any advice for us for how to move that forward?
It'll be a lot easier once, you have someone in place for sure. I think getting a council date of when you can bring it to council, and that was like kind of the next real step. Like internal conversation is great, but maybe that's the ask from Mark Hoffman, like what date can we get this to council? And then once you're there, expressing the importance of the timelines to take that money and what a big chunk it is. What is going on with Mark Hoffman is he might just need to work with the internal finance team on accepting it, because I know they're hesitant to take on the financial reporting requirements for grants under $100,000. So I'm not sure if there's some internal holdup, with that's on his end. But that's kind of the next step. I'd say trying to get on the council schedule as soon as you can for that, so you have some sort of progress or approval, even if it's like we're almost there or we're working on it, I think would be considered progress for SFI.
Yeah, sounds like good advice.
Anything else on SFI? Okay, in conservation is the other one that we have in progress. And again, there have been emails going back and forth. Let me find them. So KCD needs to, where we stand with them is, let's see. They have to write up a contract authorizing the use of the funds, and then that has to go to the KCD board for approval. So the KCD and canopy assessment would be paid for out of our KCD funds that are already sitting there. So we don't need to request additional funds from the city or anything. But that contract needs to be finalized before it goes to the KCD board, and they need to approve it in order to release the funds and move forward on the agreement. Their next meeting is August 12th. So it's next week. If we get them information, if we decide today what we want for that canopy analysis, then they can move it to their board next week. And try to get that agreement written up this week to be approved by their board next week.
Doesn't seem very practical since we don't have anything to look at to make decisions on.
So Drew had presented to us at the last meeting Again, some of kind of what it looked like and what the options were. This is one that, where we were talking about how we want things broken up. And this is a place that we had some questions, for Mark Hoffman and or Corey. Any of the different layers that we would like, so being able to do by parcel or do by city owned property, we would need to provide the maps for. So figuring out what the city has access to and what we already have mapped, is what they would need an answer on. So before we say we want to be able to filter by city owned properties, we do not have access to that as a map for them. That's not gonna get us very far. So we need to determine what are the things that are important to us that we want to be able to see in that canopy analysis. The base year comparison year will be 2017 for it.
What? 2017.
Is the comparison year,
Okay,
yes. And then the newer one is, I think 2023 was the data, something like that.
something like that, 2022, 23.
Yeah.
About 5 years.
Yeah. So we were hoping to have a conversation today about what is it that folks would like to see in that, on those canopy, the canopy analysis map. Drew, I don't know if you recall like the examples of what other cities had as their filters. I believe we get 2 included, and then it's $500 a piece for any additional beyond those 2, is my understanding.
Yeah, I thought Bothell's was very similar to what we would want. Let me say we, like I'm still there. Okay, hang on. KCD. Let me see. I can pull it up for you if that would be helpful. Sorry, it's gonna take me a minute.
Um,
Yes, let's see. So slow, of course, today.
The 2 that Mark mentioned in his email to Corey and I that we discussed before in this space were, is it important to us to have individual parcel level? And is it, the other one we had discussed here was city owned trees?
Well, I think it's definitely important to have individual parcel levels, because when the arborist looks, correct me, when you look to see how much you need to replace, they have to have the canopy coverage of that parcel.
I would agree with that.
So that's, and change. I don't know, would change at the parcel level. 5-year change at the parcel level be useful, do you think? It's more interested in sort of 5-year change.
Yeah. I know the change would just potentially be useful for some other planning data, but not as much for review. So that's kind of to you guys. So yeah, this is the Bothell one. And I can send this link if you want to look at it. So here's their areas. They had land use parcels. So this is individual parcel on here. And then they have planning sub areas. So I think that's broken down by zoning. So that might be helpful to like look at residential 2. You know, what's the canopy looking like there? And 4, that can be really helpful for planning purposes, for seeing if the tree code is working in all different types of zones. I don't think this one's zoning. I think it's a different type of sub area. And then they have riparian areas. So like, you know, stream buffers and critical areas on theirs. So they felt like that was important. And then sub basins. I would say, yeah, city owned would be useful for Lake Forest Park, and land use and maybe zoning would be my recommendations. If I was just thinking about what I would want to see to help inform like urban forestry things.
Would we sort of automatically get the 5-year change? I mean, For the whole county, for the whole city.
Yes, and I think we'd have to reread the email, but I think you can pick what year you want to look at that change, or like, you know, there's some flexibility there with how you want to look at the change. And then I would suggest asking for the data. I think there was an option to get the data after, just because then we can plug it into our own personal maps. Because the only problem with Tree Plotter is that this is only here and accessible for as long as they have a contract, you know, with Tree Plotter here. So you really want to get copies of the data so that if this isn't here anymore, hosted through KCD at any point, that you still have that mapping data to look at and be able to utilize.
Well, in the previous mapping canopy analysis, they did a lot of color coding, so they color coded like, first of all, by current canopy cover. You can color coded, you know, on a partial basis, I think, by 5-year change or whatever year change it is. And it ought to be possible to, there might be more work. We have expectations supposedly in the, probably know exactly what it is, Drew. How much canopy cover we expect on different size lots. And it would be nice to have the difference between the expected canopy cover and the actual canopy cover. Based on, I think it's based on lot size. I would have to figure out to find out what the actual rules are.
Oh, yeah, that would be a question for Planet Geo. And I know that KCD did say previously that if you wanted to talk to Planet Geo directly about what capabilities that you could have, you know, through this, but the cost that they totally would set up a meeting with you and Planet Geo directly. So I think if there's like a specific ask that's a little different from what we're seeing in, you know, most of these cities here, that it might be worth talking to Planet Geo directly.
Well, it may be zoning. Zoning may be the thing that
Yeah, I think you're right. I think zoning would cover that. Yeah, and so you'll see here when I hover over one, it says that the current canopy, and then it also says the total possible planting area. So what that's doing is like taking out the hard surfaces on the site and saying, if this was completely planted, what's the highest percentage we think this lot could get to? Is 66%. So it's not, it's like that stat is more helpful for city-owned properties and right away.
well, it'd be useful to have, if we could color code the parcels by that. You could also see what parts of the city have planting opportunities on private property. I mean, you think of an infinite number of things to do, but I think that would be. That's the thing that keeps coming up. That's the thing we wrote that to the last set of planning guidelines around there. We look at the city, where are there fewer trees, where are there more trees. Let's try to plant new trees where there are fewer trees.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it would be nice if it wasn't just fewer trees, but fewer trees plus the opportunity to plant them. Because we say, well, there's no trees here. Yeah, it's all paved. It's not really a planting opportunity.
Believe your toggle, if I'm reading it correctly, the 2 gray squares on the left with the sliders,
Mm-hmm.
toggle to the other slider. So not moving that slider, but clicking the button all the way on the left on the bottom box.
Oh, this
No,
one.
that one. So you're now seeing plantable area should be how it's color coded. So you can see which parcels have, I assume that's what it's telling us, is which parcels have higher plantable areas.
Yeah.
Is that a percent? Yeah, it is percent. Okay, cool. So
So
if you had a map for the whole city like that, you would say,
So-
here.
you can look,
Yeah.
if we had it so
Yeah.
that you could look at city-owned properties, you would be able to look at city-owned properties and then see which of those are mostly a parking lot versus which of those are green space. And identify what's got the highest volume of plantable areas, and then you can toggle back and forth to see, okay, how much is actually planted there.
Yeah. So like, yeah, even looking at riparian areas, which they have mapped. And saying, oh. There's a lot of available planting. for the riparian areas in certain spots and not.
Yeah.
Surprising.
Uh, do we feel like there is enough use to do if the city has data, has the map for city owned properties, to have that as one of your filters on there, similar to how that they have riparian areas, to have a map that specifically does city owned proprities?
You know,
Yeah, for sure.
And I've seen a map of city-owned properties that does exist,
Okay,
maybe not before we transfer to this system.
we'll find out. It looked like from the way their riparian was done, that did not feel like a super formal map. So I'm curious what formats they needed. It seemed from that to me like it may be really flexible. Are there other views that folks can think of that you would like me to work with Mark and Corey to see if the city has? Like, do we want something like Bothell has with riparian areas? Is that something we feel like would be helpful? Are there,
I will say, I don't think that Lake Forest Park currently has very good data sets for that. So, which is a known priority that Mark has to redo our stream truthing in Lake Forest Park and look at wetland stuff. So I just don't think it would be valuable at this time to use the old data.
there?
And
Well,
Which is,
sorry, folks, what was the consensus about comparing to the 5 years ago or the previous data? What did we say that is possible, or is that extra that we have to pay for?
We know the base year that Planet Geo has selected for everyone will be 2017. I don't think we've found in the system kind of what it allows you to do in looking at change over time. I think
Because that
that
does seem like it would be really
functionality.
valuable.
Josh, what was your question again, Mark? I couldn't hear you, Mark. I
Oh,
heard you.
I'm sorry. It does seem like it would be really valuable to see where changes have happened since the base year that they're using. I mean, that's going to show trends. It's going to show whether, I would think we'd be able to see, the areas, are we growing canopy, shrinking canopy in some zones and others?
Well, the single most important question I would want out of the whole thing is that information for the city.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the single one number that says, yes, the tree code is working, or no, the tree code is not working. The tree code and the arborist together.
Right.
But I think having it on an individual property basis. Not so much so you could look at individual properties, but so you could look at the city and say, oh yeah, but
It's getting darker, it's getting
It's getting-
lighter,
yeah,
it's getting
yeah.
darker up here and lighter
Right,
down
exactly,
there. Yeah.
so this is another example of a different city that was done pretty recently. Burien, they do not have individual ones on here, but they do have, here's the option. So Bothell must have not done the comparison, but here you can select years. So you can select here 2017, 2023, and then here's the change
Okay.
layer as well. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
what that would look like.
Okay.
Bothell just didn't have it on theirs.
And this is Burien does?
Yes, I can put that in the chat so you guys have that reference. So it's saying, yeah, from -6% to a gain of 6%, that's the spread. And then they also here have types of land cover. And I know the arborist at Burien too. So if you think it would be helpful to talk to him at all, to, say, what kind of data did you guys have? Or, if you have any questions, he would be more than happy to talk to you guys.
So what are the ones that they have?
They have census block groups and census blocks, and I don't know what Burien hexagons are. Kind of interesting.
testing bees.
Yeah. So they must have, for some reason, maybe it's the way they do their code, really cared about census blocks, or maybe they just didn't have parcel data and didn't want to invest in it. I don't know. And so this is also, look at these filters are also custom to Burien. I don't know if this is an ask or just available, but you know, it also shows some of these demographic filters as well. Yeah, and then this plan page is kind of nice. I don't want to get too into it now, but if you play around with the tool, it allows you to model like, okay, if we're increasing canopy by this percent with these kind of trees, I don't know, you can just like put a scenario in to see how it affects tree canopy. You know, if we're planting X amount of trees per year in these areas, like how is that going to impact our tree canopy? Does it get us closer to our goals? So it's just kind of nice. Like this tool can do a lot of things.
Yeah, it's really cool.
But yeah, I think this canopy change layer is going to be really cool for, I think, part of what this group likes looking at.
So not ready to give our proposal to KCD until we can collaborate with Corey to figure out what we have available from the city or Mark or the new urban forest planner. But can continue thinking about if there are ways that we would like to use it.
Well, one thing that was called out in the previous set of maps was all the protected areas, I'm sorry, critical areas. So, I mean, they were just colored in, but you could see, because it was colored in, you could see what the canopy cover was in those areas. It's kind of interesting. I don't know what terribly important, but we were a little more worried about. I guess we might be worried about what's happening in the critical areas, the steep hillsides and things like that, if they're growing.
Yeah.
Or if they're losing cover.
Did you put the link to that in the chat today, Drew?
To that map?
Yeah.
Yes.
Elizabeth, would it be possible for you to send that link out to the tree board?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I Bothell for parcel data and Burien for canopy change.
Great.
Did Bothell not do canopy change?
Bothell didn't, but they might have. Project's been going on for a while, and some of the cities did it a while back. So it might not have been something that they offered when Bothell did theirs, and they might be on the list right now to get it updated at some point. So it just kind of depends when they did it and what was important for them.
But it seems like everybody would want to go there.
I know. But you know, they don't have an urban forester on staff, so sometimes that's, you know, and they don't have a tree board. So you know, sometimes too, if you don't have the people asking for the right things, it doesn't happen.
Which is why we want to make sure we ask for the right things in all of them. Okay. I made a couple notes. You'll send out the link to us so that people can play with the tool, and I will follow up in the email with Mark and Corey and let them know what we discussed this evening, and that we're kind of all still, it seems like, same page that we were on last time we discussed it, in terms of having those couple city-owned properties, individual parcels being our kind of top priorities, and then making sure that we have that filter like Burien to be able to look at comparisons over time. Cool. I will follow up with them on that. Tree ordinance.
It's kind of in Mark's hand right now.
Hoffman or
Yes.
okay.
He's not here today.
Yeah. So I don't think we have much to say on that.
Next meeting.
Yeah. Okay. One more can to kick down the road on that one.
Well, I'm assuming at some point Mark will get in touch with me. And probably maybe Mark Phillips also, and say, you know, we want to do it here, and then we're sketch out some plans of how we actually make the presentation to the council.
Yeah.
I don't know how that gets done. I don't know if the people, the city pays to do stuff. basically do the presentation and I would just go in as sort of a resource. Or if they want me to make a presentation or what, I mean, I don't.
Yeah,
I think if Drew were still here, it would be logical for her to make the main presentation, but. And was, if we have enough time with the new urban forest plan to get up to speed, then he or she could do it.
yeah, and that's, I suspect it will depend on. Do we wait for that person to get here and up to speed, or do we ask Mark, like, hey, we'd really like to move this forward faster? What can we do to make it happen? So,
I think.
Yeah.
I think the tree board is pretty well done its thing. I mean, we said these are what we wanted to recommend.
yeah,
So it's mostly just a matter of figuring out how to get it presented to the council in a way that makes the council agree.
get it in front of the right people for, yeah, the next step. The last thing we have on here is outreach opportunities. We've got 2 of them coming up, picnic in the park and the farmers market table that we'll be sharing with Climate Action Committee on October 5th. I believe we talked last time about who was available to be at those, but unless it's in the minutes, I don't have it in front of me. Yeah, look at that. Chair Phillips, looks like you and I
Yeah,
volunteered for picnic in the park.
I think I can do both.
Do so Saturday, no, Sunday, September 6th. What day is it? Saturday?
Oh, wait, September 6th is a Saturday.
Saturday. Would anyone else
Yeah, I'll probably.
like to? I thought I had that on my calendar and I don't. Gonna put it on right now.
Say that, King's Status Leaguers again.
I believe so. Let me pull up the details on it as soon as I have it blocked off here so I don't double book myself.
I do think I am going to head out because I have some other work I still need to do, just to give you a state of how my week is going. But I just knew you guys were talking about this stuff right away for Old Business Sound Together. Do you have any other questions for me or anything I can help you guys out with quick before I hop off?
I don't think so.
Thank you
Okay.
again.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Going well. Good to see you.
Yeah, I will try to make next month too, if I'm free at least for a little bit, again, just in case you guys have anything outstanding I can help with. It's really nice to see you all. I miss the community a lot and I'm here anytime. Feel free to reach out. I think I sent my contact info out, but yeah, happy to share it again if you need it. And hope
Good
it's
to see you.
rooting for you guys. Thank you.
Bye. First thing, picnic in the park.
Yes, it is Saturday, September 6th from 11 to 3. So it's 4 hours. I am happy to be there for the full thing. Really?
Nobody else knows how to operate her trees.
4 hours. It's not that bad.
I would be there for 2 of those hours,
Okay.
probably the first 2.
Okay, I'll be there for the second too.
I can take a shift too, Victoria. Whichever is important, I guess the second 2 would, if that works.
Either way, sure. Doug. I'll have you 2 scheduled for the afternoon. The 2 of us can do the morning.
Perfect.
And if anything comes up, I'm happy to stick around for the afternoon if y'all need it, or if somebody isn't able to make it. I can pick up the info box from you at some point between now and then. If you want to just hand it to me tonight, I can hold on to it for the month, or if it's, yeah, not a problem. So I'll coordinate and get the materials box from you. Are there any, I will write to Linda and see closer to the event and see if she would like us to have anything on the blue heron stuff that she presented today. Are there other materials or info that we want at this event? This is the one they recommend that you make it kid friendly, have activities, have family friendly stuff, so I can have the coloring pages that we've had in the past, I'll bring coloring supplies and the little. There's different trees that you can color and little fun facts about Lake Forest Park trees on them, so I'll have a stack of those. I think they're already printed and in the box. Is there anything else that we want new materials made for either that one or the October event? On any updates or info or happenings that folks can think of?
It'll probably be too soon to do anything about the grants, right? I mean, the study, the canopy study probably won't be far enough along.
I would guess,
Yeah.
and I think, do you happen to know when I can find it in my email, the comment period for the climate element closes?
I don't remember at the time. I think it was like late August,
Okay,
or I could be.
I think it's sometime between now and September 6th, but I couldn't remember if it was late August or late September. So if that is still open, we can have info there suggesting that people go comment, but I think the public comments will be closed by then.
Mhm.
I do know I talked to Corey too. She said she sent out an application for a booth.
Yes, I will fill that out and get it sent back into Corey.
Yeah, she said.
I assume we are a go for having a table there, and I should claim us a table.
Yeah.
Yeah, she just said she just needed it filled out.
Yep. Anything else folks can think of that we want to communicate to the community about?
Those
Do we
are
need to have some tree cookies for the kiddos?
We could do spruce needle tea. Have you ever heard of that before?
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, if folks can think of any activity things they could do,
Yeah.
something more creative than
Wasn't
color
there a
patients.
guess? Oh, didn't you guys do some sort of like guess the age or height of the tree? Didn't you guys do something?
I don't think so.
Oh, God. I don't know.
We had to like put a sticker on a thing of how concerned are you about our trees? So if we have any other interactive, is there a question we want to ask the community? We can have like a
Yeah.
flip chart and have folks give us feedback on how they're feeling about our trees, if there is a question that we think would actually be helpful for us to know.
I would be curious, but I don't think we need to know the answer. If people think that the canopy cover is increasing or decreasing or staying the same.
Yeah. Oh, we did do, we tried to do like 2 truths and a lie type thing.
Yeah.
But it didn't, we didn't have it set up in a way that people like knew what was going on.
I
think.
got it.
Yeah.
So I thought you had some sort of game.
Do we want to
Yeah.
try that again, Victoria?
We can try.
But I can't remember what it was. That
We had some like facts about our tree canopy and tried to do a like 2 truths and a lie. Do you know which one of these is correct?
Ah.
But yeah. I think we need to coach people more on what we want them to do if we want to make that a thing.
Yeah, they have to be, yeah, you kind of have to walk them through it.
Yeah. Okay. For October, farmers market table, we are going to be sharing a table with Climate Action Committee. So I am guessing that we probably only need one of us at a time at that. That is Sunday, October 5th. 10 to 2. Do folks want to hang out with Climate Action Committee for a couple hours on a Sunday? I'm happy to do any portion of it.
Ditto. You can plug me in or whatever.
Okay,
how about
you're out of town. Okay, great.
I'm not available that day, unfortunately.
Okay. Sounds like it's me and you.
that?
Sounds good.
Mark will probably show up.
Yeah, I'm sure. So yeah, we can, and we can coordinate at the September meeting to confirm. we will also have, unless we move it, a tree board meeting just a couple days before picnic in the park.
Hmm,
If there is anything that comes up at that meeting that we realize we want to be able to communicate about, advertise, I'll have a couple days, yeah, that we can put
And
together
same
any
thing
last
for
minute
the-
materials.
same thing for the farmer's market too.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great. We should have, unless we move either meeting, we'll have a tree board meeting, right, the week before each of those.
Probably not gonna move picnic in the park, so.
Unless we move either of the tree board meetings.
Oh,
Um. Okay. Anything else on any other old business or outreach stuff? Before we move to next meeting, record time.
I know, I
Okay.
just wanna congratulate you on the speed of this meeting.
Because I was not adequately prepared for any of the
Amazing,
business to
amazing.
actually make any of the decisions we needed to make tonight. No, not having Mark here and not having an urban forest planner, I think,
Yeah.
did us a disservice on getting through formal business.
No, well done, Victoria. Not an easy job.
For sure. for sure.
Agenda for next meeting, what do we need to talk about?
Everything on the list already.
Seems like it.
So basically
Are we-
revisiting all the same old business?
Yeah, with a little bit more nuance, right? We
Okay.
probably can skip the outreach opportunities, but more of a check-in.
Yeah.
Just to confirm who's there. And tree ordinance will be Mark.
Yep.
Perfect.
Anything else folks are hoping to cover in the next meeting?
Is there anything we haven't?
I just wanna point out that that's Labor Day week, so
It is 2 days after Labor Day, so can folks make it to the next meeting?
I can
Yes.
send out a poll or
I can make it.
Sorry, which day are we talking, what's the date?
It is the 3rd.
well, so Labor Day is. No, oh,
The 3rd is Wednesday.
Thursday, Wednesday.
The 6th is picnic in the park.
Is the picnic in the park.
Labor Day is the, like, the first.
First, yeah, Monday the 1st. Um,
I can do it the 3rd.
I'll be around the 3rd. Yeah. And then hopefully we have one or both of Dick and Mark, but as long as the 4 of us make it, we got a quorum.
Perfect.
I think we're good.
Business done.
Excellent. Yes. Anything else for the good of the order? Would anyone like to move that we wrap this up?
I'm sure, Richard.
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
Okay, let's adjourn. That's
Great
it.
job, Victoria. You did
Thanks,
awesome.
everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Fantastic. My husband's gonna be shocked that